Welcome people to the World Wide Web. So it is Cypher Sigma here, and it is another movie review time. So as you already know from the thumbnail, this is Wicked for Good. So yes, this is the sequel, part 2, conclusion, even though there is some speculation that there will be a third one. In the Wicked franchise, which is obviously based off a musical. It's about 2.5 hours or 2 and a bit hours, I think, if you take the interval out. This film runs for 2 hours and 17 minutes. And yeah, it's basically the conclusion. If you haven't seen the first movie, I will try not to give away, but essentially you have two characters who go to this magical school, Elphaba and Galinda. They go to meet the wizard. Elphaba is basically green. She meets the wizard, realizes that he's not magical as he says. He kind of turns on her because she is proper magic, and then basically she is cast out as the Wicked Witch. It essentially takes the story of the Wizard of Oz and Dorothy and then spins it on its head to make Elphaba kind of a good character. So there is it. There's nothing after credits as far as I was aware. Yeah, it was all right. We'll get more into it as we go on. If you like the first one, I'm sure you'll like this one. But yeah, spoiler warning up, and we will get into it. So as I said, this is a continuation of the first one. All the original cast members, so Cynthia Grebe is Elphaba again, Ariana Grande as Galinda, Jeff Goldblum as the Wonderful Wizard, Michelle Yeoh as Madame Morrible, then Jonathan Bailey as Fiyero, and Ethan Slater as Boq. Obviously, again, directed by John M. Chu. So as I said, this follows on from the first movie. Essentially, Elphaba is outcast. Galinda is then painted as the kind of good witch, even though she doesn't have any magic. And obviously, the wizard and Madame Morrible kind of painting her as kind of the good witch and Elphaba as the bad witch. That's kind of how things go, even though these two characters are essentially still friends. Fiyero is basically comes the head of the guard, and he is basically betrothed to Galinda. Even though you can tell he has feelings for Elphaba still. Boq is stuck in Munchkin Town, essentially looking after Elphaba's sister, who took over her dad's job. She's become not a very nice person, unfortunately, to the point of she basically forces Boq to stay, because Boq actually loves Galinda, which funny that they date in real life, but that's another question. As the story kind of goes on, you see Elphaba trying to get back at the wizard. Obviously, the monkeys are chasing her every time she tries to free animals and stuff like this. And essentially, it gets to the point of where she reaches out to the animals, but the animals are basically leaving Oz because that's not their fight. They don't want to deal with this. Elphaba returns because there is the wedding ceremony, Galinda and Fiyero. Elphaba basically goes in, meets with Galinda, all has a happy time. She meets with the wizard, even though she hated him. Essentially comes up with that obviously he will set the monkeys free if she basically joins him, and it all seems all happy and lovely until basically the head of the monkey guard, flying monkeys, reveals that there's more animals. She freaks out, lets all the animals free. They ruin the wedding. Fiyero comes in, decides to leave with Elphaba, leaving Galinda very annoyed because obviously it's a wedding day and her husband or future husband's leaving her for Elphaba. She gets kind of angry and kind of the rest of the court guard are set on them. Fiyero is captured, trying to save Elphaba because Elphaba, basically Madame Morrible creates this massive tornado, going back to the original one. She gets Dorothy, her house turns up and lands on Elphaba's sister, killing her. You don't really get to see much of Dorothy. Obviously, she goes off to do what she does in the normal one. Elphaba and Galinda have a little scrap. Obviously, Elphaba is captured by the guards. That's when Fiyero steps in. Fiyero is captured and Elphaba gets away. And this is when you see that something horrible happens to Fiyero. This then leads to kind of a confrontation that Elphaba with the monkeys who have saved her go to this kind of castle, which was Fiyero's, and he mentions kind of have this spell and are ready to do like a final showdown with Dorothy. Dorothy splashes her in water, as we all know the story. She melts away. The end. Obviously, this is all seen from Galinda, hidden away, where they kind of come to some kind of understanding. Galinda kind of goes back and forces the wizard to leave. Madame Morrible's basically left out in the rain, and Galinda kind of creates a peace for it. You then find out that Elphaba actually faked her death. Fiyero, who has been turned into a scarecrow, spoiler alert, they get together and they go off where all the animals were going off to kind of live their own world, all happily ever after. Dorothy gets potentially back, but you don't get to see much of that. So what did I think of this movie? I rate this movie 5.5. I've heard a lot of people have struggled with it. I sit in a little bit of a weird place with this, and I need to explain this. I have seen the stage show a few times, so I know what the story goes. I know how it's all linked in. So knowing that, it's a little bit harder for me to distance it, because they did the first movie. They didn't have enough time to do everything, because it'd be a 3-4 hour movie that they split it into two. I really think they should have just bunked an extra hour onto it and kind of kept it all in pace, because it's one of those things of, they kind of keep the story true to what the musical is, but then when you create this open world, you actually have more avenues to do more stuff, and they don't really. It kind of, or they kind of exaggerate a little bit, but then it causes a lot of problems, because there are a little like inconsistencies and stuff I find throughout it, which is why I've kind of stuck around the average, but it'd be like 2.7, 0.5 if it was rated at 5. Because I know the music and stuff at the beginning isn't great. It's the last 3 or 4 songs that actually start making it. Obviously, when you've seen the musical, when you get to Defying Gravity, you're such on a high. Then they have the 20-minute break, and then they come back for like the last hour, so to speak. Which obviously those 3 songs within an hour and stuff like this, or the songs that really work quite well. When you've got 2 and a bit hours and then it's split over it, it obviously isn't as much, and they're not as powerful as Defying Gravity. And I think this, and obviously because of the gap, it wanes a little bit. The inconsistencies and stuff, say like Elphaba is magic and she wants to kill the wizard, turns up at the wizard and then decides to magic, oh no, I'll do a little dance and we'll all be friends. And then you have like Galinda blatantly can see that Fiyero doesn't love her the same way that her sister doesn't love, she loves Bok, but Bok doesn't love her back. And these ones, that the story was always good when you watch the musical in the 2 and a bit hours, because it takes enough stuff out of the original Wizard of Oz, but has its own story, and it is an isolated story. And I say, what is essentially, I think it's about 2 hours if you take the interim out and stuff, or the middle break. That is enough for you to enjoy it. You enjoy all the songs; they're all really good and quite consistent. And obviously, you have the little bits, and you get to see, like Fiyero changing and stuff like this, and Dorothy and everything else. In this one, it was really, as I say, they extend it, and then you Madame Morrible, she's magic. She can create this magic tornado. Well, I'm sure she could have easily captured Elphaba. Elphaba has all his magic powers, but is magically apprehended by human guards and held in place, and she magically can't do any of the spells and stuff like this. Fiyero is essentially left when these flying monkeys fly off with Elphaba, and not 2 of them could have grabbed hold of him and flown off. There's bits like this, like the fact they try and hide stuff that he's the scarecrow until the very end. You don't get to see any of them. You don't get to see Dorothy at all. And then the final battle is Ariana Grande sitting for this wooden thing, and then this shadow on a wall was a bit like, no, why are you hiding? It's deliberately you not wanting to put a face to Dorothy, even though there was a proper actress there. It was stuff like, you could have essentially done the second movie and done the Wizard of Oz, and then just added Elphaba bits in. Probably would have been a better film in my eyes, and I can see why a lot of people there. I mean, no one was really singing. People were taking kids to say, if you really love the first one, as I say, when you get to Defying Gravity, I find you are on a little bit of a high, because that was a year ago and stuff like this. It did start, as I say, the music there. I say Michelle Yeoh's singing in the first 1 or 2 movie songs, not movies, didn't quite fit in as it did within the first movie. There's stuff like background dancers with Galinda with these balls and stuff like that, and I'm like, why are they even there? Whereas in the first one, you had the proper townspeople singing, and a lot of them are then just standing there like going, oh, it's Galinda and stuff like this. I don't know. It just, as I say, it felt like the first movie did a good enough job of extending what was essentially the first half of the film, the first half of the musical. Sorry, the second half, as I say, I would have tagged an extra hour on and just done it like a Lord of the Rings extended edition, done 3.5 hours, and you could have probably fitted it all into one movie, had Defying Gravity where it is like 2 hour bit, and then just having an hour to explain that last bit, I think would have set a lot better. But anyway, that has been my review of Wicked for Good. Have you seen this movie? What do you think? Put your thoughts and feelings in the comments below so we can carry on these conversations. Otherwise, I've been Chris from Cypher Sigma Screen Time, if I can get my words out, and I'll definitely see you in the next